Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about perhaps the greatest set that never was. That's right, this set was designed but never printed, lost in the history of Magic. I, of course, am talking about Spectral Chaos. So, Spectral Chaos was a Magic the Gathering set designed by Barry Reich in the early 1990s. After 4 rounds of playtesting, it was submitted to WotC in 1995 and again in 1997, but it was never released. But parts of the design were used for future sets like Tempest and Invasion. Now, I'm not here to get into the entire history of Spectral Chaos because there's already a great video that gets into that. So if you want to learn more about the history, go and check out Spectral Chaos Magic's Lost Set from General Collectibles. Now, I personally hadn't heard about Spectral Chaos until about a month ago when it started getting talked about on Reddit. Someone was working to reimagine and recreate the set, and word got spread around really quickly. From my understanding, essentially out of fear of a potential lawsuit from Wizards because this got bigger than they thought it would be, it was shut down. So over 20 years in the making and still no Spectral Chaos. Now, will this set ever get printed by Wizards or someone else? I don't know. But I hope that at least parts of the set get printed at some point because it's really sweet. From what I could tell, there are 322 cards in this set, and there are plenty of ones that are really cool and unique and do some things that we really haven't seen before. So for today, let's jump into some of those unique and awesome cards and concepts from this set. And what better place to start off than with the card, Spectral Chaos. Spectral Chaos is a chaotic sorcery. That's right, chaotic. Spectral Chaos introduces a new type of card with chaotic cards. But we'll get to that here in a bit. Anyway, Spectral Chaos is a chaotic sorcery that costs white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, or in other words, double Wooburg. It says end the turn, change places with an opponent that includes hands, libraries, graveyards, everything. You play for them, they play for you. The winning player wins the game. After changing places, it is your turn. This type of card has never been printed in Magic. There are definitely cards out there that allow you to take over someone's turn, but don't allow you to entirely switch places. This would be an insanely awesome card for Commander. Now let's just pretend for a second that this is actually legal in Commander. Some things to consider before casting this. If you are able to cast this card, you're probably in a decent position, because you've got perfect mana fixing and you've got at least 10 mana. So the other player would have to be in a much better position for you to actually cast this. But there are plenty of ritual type effects or ways to cheat on mana so that you're not actually casting this for its full cost. So having the potential from going from worst position to first position is fantastic. I can see entire decks built around this card and just trying to win from there. And I can also see a lot of players getting salty when they get switched around. This also kind of has the potential to skip turn order as well. To my knowledge, Spectral Chaos was designed for one-on-one, not multiplayer. So switching places, getting another turn, and kind of moving around the turn order could rub some players the wrong way. But again, I think it's a really fun card and could lead to some really interesting games. Now, Spectral Chaos is probably the top of the list of the most chaotic cards of this set. But there are plenty more chaotic cards in this set, and ones that interact with chaotic cards. For example, Helm of Disorder and Helm of Order are ones that have triggers whenever chaotic cards are cast. Helm of Disorder is an artifact that costs 1, and it says whenever a player casts a chaotic spell, gain 1 life. And then Helm of Order is an artifact that costs 2, and it says whenever another player casts a chaotic spell, Helm of Order deals 2 damage to that player. So either benefiting or punishing effects can happen whenever chaotic spells are cast. There are definitely other chaotic effects in the set which lead to a very interesting draft strategy for Limited. But now I just want to highlight some of my favorite cards in this set that do some really unique and interesting things. So let's start things off with Graveyard Waltz. It's a chaotic enchantment that costs 1 black, black, green. It says whenever a player would draw a card for the first time during their draw step, that player may exile an instant sorcery card from their graveyard instead. If that player does, he or she may cast that card from exile this turn. If that card is cast this turn, exile it as it resolves. This is a really interesting card that allows everyone to essentially cast instants and sorceries from their graveyard. Also, the fact that it's a Golgari card is really interesting. Golgari is definitely a color combination that really cares about the graveyard, but not usually instants and sorceries. Typically, I would think of that as a more is-it thing. Regardless, this is an old set and some of the very first multicolor designs as well. So color pie breaks in a chaotic theme set are definitely to be expected. Anyways, let's move on to the next one with Shift. It's a chaotic enchantment that costs green-blue, and it says switch each creature's power and toughness. So this is a permanent switch that affects every creature on the board. You can definitely use this to your advantage by building your deck around high toughness creatures. And then Chain Reaction is another chaotic enchantment that costs 2 blue, red, red. It says whenever a creature dies, that creature's controller chooses target creature they control with toughness X or less, where X is the original creature's toughness. Chain Reaction deals X damage to that creature. So essentially this card in play can cause a chain reaction. One creature dies, you gotta ping another creature, that creature dies, you ping another creature, so on and so forth. But maybe you could abuse this with either regeneration or indestructible creatures in your deck. Up next, we've got Sultana Carter, which is an enchantment for a blue. It says whenever a creature with power and toughness each less than 2 enters the battlefield, that creature's controller draws a card unless that player has already drawn a card this way this turn. So if your deck's entirely built around 1/1s, this can be a fantastic draw engine for your deck. If you've got some instant speed ways to make some small tokens, you can draw a card during each player's turn. And then let's move on to Some Enchanted Evening, which is an enchantment that costs 2 green. It says change the text of each enchantment in play by replacing each instance of a number outside of that permanent's mana cost with that number times 2. So outside of mana cost, essentially every number is doubled. This can do some crazy and chaotic things that no one is expecting. Again, if you're that player that's playing Sultana Carter, then it's going to be less than 4 instead of 2. And of course, that player probably didn't account for that, and then you can even benefit from that even more. Next up, though, we've got Lunacy, which is an enchantment for 1 black. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a Chaos counter on Lunacy, then if there are 4 or more Chaos counters on Lunacy, remove them. All black creatures get the indicated effect. 0 Chaos counters, -1/-1. 1 Chaos counter, +1/+1. 2 Chaos counters, +3/+2, and 3 Chaos counters, +1/+1. So this is a really interesting enchantment with a variable effect depending on how many counters are on it. More counters doesn't necessarily mean better. It hurts you, then benefits you, then really benefits you, then goes back to just benefiting you. But if you can find a way to keep those Chaos counters at 3, you're going to be in a really good position. And then let's move on to Fusion, which is a chaotic enchantment aura that costs 2 blue, red. It says enchant 2 creatures you control. When Fusion enters the battlefield, exile both enchanted creatures. Fusion becomes a creature with base power and toughness equal to the total base power and toughness of the exiled creatures, is all colors of the exiled creatures, and gains all ability of the exiled creatures. Attach all enchantments that were attached to the exiled creatures to Fusion. When Fusion leaves the battlefield, put the exiled creatures into their owner's graveyard. Or in other words, Fusion fuses 2 creatures together. You get 1 giant creature that's essentially a complete combination of both. Kind of like what people are hoping for Mutate, but that's not entirely Mutate. Anyways, next up is Vicarious Entity. It's an aura that says enchant creature and it costs 2 white-black. It says you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. So this is kind of like a Lich effect, but you put it on a creature. With your newly created Lich in play, you stay alive even when your life total hits 0. Now, obviously you want to put this on a creature that's indestructible or has hexproof or is really hard to deal with. And you can even enchant your opponent's creature as well, so keep that in mind. And speaking of Liches, next up is Elric's Oath. It's a sorcery for black. It says draw X cards where X is your life total, you have no maximum hand size, set your life total to 0, you can't gain life, you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life, whenever you would lose life, sacrifice that many permanents instead, when you control no permanents, you lose the game. So this is very much like a Lich effect, but in sorcery form, and it draws you an absurd amount of cards. It definitely changes the game on your side though, because instead of losing life, you've got to sacrifice permanents. But if you've got a ton of tokens or ways to prevent life loss, you might be fine. But yeah, drawing 40 cards and going down to 0 life on turn 4 is pretty funny in Commander. And then we've got Wild Joker, a 0/2 elf druid that costs 1 and a green. She has tap. Wild Joker becomes a copy of target instant or sorcery spell casted with the same targets as the original. So it's like a copy spell on a green creature. You essentially are turning your creature into a spell, and that can be very powerful. Next up is Polymorph. No, not that Polymorph. This Polymorph was made before that Polymorph. Anyways, this is a different Polymorph. It's an instant for 2 red, and it says target permanent becomes a copy of another target permanent. If that permanent becomes an aura enchantment, that permanent's controller attaches it to a permanent they could enchant. If they don't, that player sacrifices it. So yeah, you could turn the most powerful creature on the board into a land, or a land into the most powerful creature, or an enchantment, or an artifact, or whatnot. An enchantment that I especially want to highlight though is Blessed Land. It's an aura that says enchant land and it costs a white. It says enchanted land gains indestructible and protection from enchantments. This effect does not remove Blessed Land. And it says whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds a colorless to their mana pool. Hey wizards, mana ramp in white. This card was designed for you over 20 years ago. This is how you do it. I'm definitely not at all salty about this. But in all seriousness, I do think that this is a solution for giving white ramp. Now, for a long time, many Wizards designers have been pretty set in the fact that they don't want white to have either a ramp or a draw. And then M21 rolls around with the new Mangara, and they say, oh yeah, now draw is okay, they just have to be bad at drawing, but they can still draw cards. So I ask you this, why not ramp? Literally every other color has ways to ramp effectively. They might be rituals or temporary ramp or things that help you cheat on mana costs, but there are ways to ramp. White does not, and this is a solution. White is all about enchantments, and enchantment-based ramp seems perfect. Now, if there were more enchantment-based ramp spells for white, I don't think that they all should give indestructibility. There's got to be some kind of a risk that you are taking for enchanting your land. If your land is bounced or destroyed, you're going to lose that enchantment. Now, of course, they could just destroy the enchantment, but I do think that those stakes need to be just a bit higher. But yeah, there is definitely a solution for mono white decks, and Wizards, it's staring you in the face. But moving on, let's move on to some really unique rituals from this set. Elvis Meditation is an instant that costs a black and it adds blue, blue, blue. Dwarven Ritual is an instant for a red and it adds black, black, black. And Floraticum is an instant that costs a white and adds green, green, green. Now, rituals are typically only seen in black and red, and they typically only produce their colors. So seeing a ritual outside of those colors, and also each of these rituals producing different colors, is really unique. But another type of ritual that I thought was really sweet is the anti-mana cycle. Each of these are chaotic instants and they each cost 0. Let's just use green-blue anti-mana as an example. It's going to add green to your mana pool for each tapped island you control and blue to your mana pool for each tapped forest you control. So it kind of reverses your mana and benefits you based on the number of tapped lands that you control. If you've got all islands and forests, you can essentially just tap out and double up your mana. These are some really cool spells I think are very powerful and could lead to some really explosive turns. The combinations are black-green, blue-red, green-blue, red-white, and white-black. Now, whether or not that cycle would ever be completed, we wouldn't know because they need to print these first. Regardless, I think it's a really cool and innovative concept. But now let's tackle some artifacts that really stood out to me as well, like Lunar Ring. It's an artifact for 0 and it can tap to add 3 to your mana pool, but you can only activate this ability if it's not your turn. So this can help with activations and to cast instants, but it can't help you on your own turn. A mana rock that only benefits you outside of your own turn is a really interesting concept. But now let's move on to Faded Mox, which is an artifact for 0 and it taps to add a colorless. Yep, that's right, another Mox. Even though I don't agree with it, the Moxen are currently banned in Commander. I'm not sure if this one would be though, since it's adding colorless and not a particular color. I mean, Mana Crypt costs the same amount and adds twice as much mana, so I think this would be fine. And finally, there's Thought Stone, which is an artifact that costs 2, and it says blue spells cost 1 or blue less to cast. Yeah, this is definitely like Sapphire Medallion and uses the exact same art, but the main difference is that this has the blue less to cast. You've got a bunch of blue spells in your deck that just cost a blue, now you can cast them for free. Reducing color and a mana cost is something that you typically don't see. But the final card that I want to bring up today from this amazing set is Unstable Terrain. It's a chaotic land that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a chaos counter on unstable terrain. Then if there are 5 or more chaos counters on unstable terrain, remove them. Unstable terrain is the indicated basic land type in addition to its other types. 0 island, 1 mountain, 2 plains, 3 swamp, 4 forest. So based on the number of chaos counters that are on it, it's changing types. Again, I find this concept to be really innovative. Sometimes the type that this land is might really help you out, and other times it might hurt you. And you might even have some ways to manipulate the number of counters that are on it. But overall in this set, I think there are a ton of cool concepts and cards. And again, mono white ramp. Wizards, do it. And with that, this show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on Spectral Chaos are. Do you think it's ever going to get printed? Do you want it printed? So yeah, comment below, and as always, thanks again, and have a good one.